Welcome to 'Tis the Soundtrack, the podcast dedicated to digging deep and bringing you the merriest of music all year long. I'm your host, Kevin Williams, and fall brought me an unexpected surprise this year, an impromptu bathroom remodel due to a poorly installed shower from the previous bathroom remodel 8 years ago, which resulted in not a small amount of water damage and dry rot. So, instead of spending September doing fun fall things, like tending to the pumpkin patch my wife and I put in this year, or trying all those new, terrible pumpkin spice flavored foods, or recording new podcast episodes, I've spent the last several weeks chiseling out tile, removing dry rot, and installing new subflooring. But I had to take a break from all the home repairs to release this special episode. I'm excited to share this latest entry in our Merry Mixtape series, where I'm joined by film critic, podcaster, and author of Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas, Alonso Duralde. Alonso, whose book Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas was just released 2 weeks ago in a revised and expanded edition, was kind enough to come on and share his mixtape of songs that span the history of Christmas cinema. Before we jump into the conversation, I do want to issue a quick content warning. Alonso's and my conversation does at times delve into topics, like the controversy regarding the song Baby It's Cold Outside, where some folks may feel the discussion is not appropriate for the youngest of listeners. I felt the conversation was important, so rather than deliver a television edit of this episode, you're getting the full director's cut. And with that, we'll jump into our conversation. Joining me for this episode of our Merry Mixtape series is film critic, podcaster, and author of Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas, the one, the only, Alonso Duralde.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So before we dive into your Merry Mixtape, on the off chance that we have some listeners who aren't already familiar with Maximum Film, or Linoleum Knife, or your books, or the myriad of other things you do you want to take a few minutes and talk about your current endeavors and the new edition of your book?
Sure. I'm a film critic, currently writing reviews for The Film Verdict, and I do quite a few podcasts. Linoleum Knife with my husband, Dave White, which is about to hit its 15th birthday. Maximum Film on the Maximum Fun Network, which is described as a film podcast that isn't just three straight white guys, which I do with Drea Clark and Kevin Avery. Breakfast All Day is a YouTube show I do with Christy Lemire. She's, a legendary critic. We've worked together for years. We used to be on a show called What the Flick together, and now we've been doing Breakfast All Day since about 2018. And then I pop in pretty regularly on Deck the Hallmark to talk about non-Hallmark, non-Lifetime Christmas movies. Is usually my beat. And I'm the author of Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas, which is just now hitting in its brand new revised and updated edition. I originally put the book out in 2010, so I had 15 years worth of newer Christmas movies to work in, as well as some classics I didn't get to the first time around. So if you have the first book, you're going to find a lot of new stuff here. And if you don't have the first book, this is a great place to start.
Yeah, and I believe it came out yesterday when we're recording, so when people are first listening to this, it'll be out for a couple weeks. So on your digital platform of choice or your physical bookstore of choice, it's there, it's ready for you.
Get your library to get a copy.
There you go. For listeners who may be new to Merry Mixtapes, how it works is a guest will choose a theme and then select their songs. The original intent was to keep the runtime under 74 minutes because that represents how much music you could fit on a CD, so you could take that physical mixtape and give it to someone else. We haven't been great about sticking to that rule. Some folks have come on with double albums, some have done other things. But Alonso, you were right at the 73-minute mark, so the consummate professional that you are, you nailed it perfectly.
Hey, I started making mixtapes when they were still on tape. So, I have respect for the medium.
Yeah, right there with you. Before we dive into your song selection, I do have a few questions that I ask all of our Merry Mixtapes guests.
Sure, shoot.
So since you've already let it slip that you not only have made mixtapes, but you've made them on cassette, do you remember either the first mixtape you ever made or maybe a particularly memorable one?
I have a very clear memory of the first one I ever made because when I went to college in the fall of 1984, I started working for the radio station. And it was really the first time I had access to a big library of records. And so I would go into, we had there was the control room where you were actually playing music that was going out in the airwaves. We had kind of a little production room as well. And you could go in there and use the turntables, and there was a tape deck set up. So I just grabbed a bunch of records off the shelf of stuff that I had always wanted to have, but didn't have easy access to. And yeah, that was my first mixtape. And then I made a lot of them through college. I would make them for parties. And then after college, I started making them at the end of the year with all of my sort of favorite songs of the year just passed. And I would start mass duplicating them and give them to friends. And it became known as what I called the audio fruitcake. And I did that for about 20 years. That was Christmas time would roll around and I would just be handing out cassettes to everybody. And then in the last few years, finally, I made the jump to CDs somewhere in the mid 2000s.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's probably going to be obvious to folks with your introduction, but do you want to tell us the theme of the tape we're about to discuss?
Yeah, I thought it would be fun to pick songs that were featured in, not necessarily introduced in, but sometimes that's the case as well, movies. And it's a broad list of movies in terms of, genre and representation, which is what the book is about. The book is about, it's got all of your sort of traditional holiday favorites, but it also has action movies and horror movies and, films like, I don't know, The Lion in Winter or Eyes Wide Shut, the people might not immediately think of as a Christmas movie, but that is indeed a Christmas movie. So I thought it'd be fun to try and pull a sampling of music. Again, some cases here, these were introduced in movies, and other times it was just a matter of either memorably presented in a film or perhaps popularized in a film. And it's a road trip that's going to take us from the 40s to fairly recently.
Perfect. And last question before we get started, who would you give this mixtape to? Or is there a particular kind of person who you think would enjoy popping this in and listening to it?
Oh, good question. I think this one is for all the people who, listen to this show year round and who listen to, Can't Wait for Christmas and Christmas Morning and Christmas Creeps and Christmas Past. If you're tuning in March or July, you're my people. And this one's for you.
All right. You ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right. Your first song is White Christmas by Bing Crosby, and it's the Holiday Inn version.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas with every Christmas card I write.
Yeah, this is, kind of a historic moment. I've been in journalism long enough to not say, oh, well, this is the very first. But I think it's among the first times that a popular Christmas song was launched from a movie. So yeah, Holiday Inn features, a lot of great Irving Berlin songs. And this is where White Christmas debuted, and it won the Best Song Oscar and very quickly established itself as a kind of cornerstone American Christmas song because of World War II. This was a really sort of sweetly nostalgic song about, it's the ones I used to know, and even the beginning, where it's the spoken intro that you get sometimes, like it's December the 24th and I'm longing to be up north. It's all about wanting and yearning. And so it played in perfectly for servicemen who were far away from home on Christmas and their loved ones who were missing them on Christmas. And so, yeah, it became instantly iconic and remains, on the Mount Rushmore of Christmas songs to this day.
Yeah. I'll add to that too, that, it's not the version of White Christmas that folks are probably familiar with Bing singing from his White Christmas album that came out toward the end of the decade. So the scene from the movie where this is just Bing Crosby and Marjorie Reynolds. And so one thing for listeners at home, when this episode drops, there'll be links in the show notes to this mixtape so you can listen to the playlist on YouTube and Tidal. So for title, I'm pretty much stuck with the songs as they're released. But for YouTube, whenever possible, the song that will be included will be the full scene from the movie, so you can see it in the whole context that Alonso's describing here.
Excellent.
And something that I kind of noticed putting this together too, and we'll see it as we march through them, a lot of these early ones, so from the 40s into the 50s, the musicals, the types of movies they were in, you got the full song in the movie. And so we can go to YouTube and we can find the full song in the movie. And then as you get further along, it's more like modern soundtracks where it's 30 seconds of the song in the movie. So we've got to go outside of the movie to hear the whole thing.
Exactly.
All right. And with that, we'll move on to number 2. It's Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas by Judy Garland.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. Next year all our troubles will be out of sight.
Yeah, so this is another one where I think maybe people don't know that this had its origins as a song in a movie musical. It is from Meet Me in St. Louis, which has been embraced as a Christmas movie mainly because of the power of this song, but is actually set over the course of a year. We see this family through a hot summer. We see them through Halloween. There's a lot of different, tones that the film is covering in this sort of nostalgic look back at the United States in the turn of the century. But basically it's the family lives in St. Louis. They're very excited that the World's Fair is going to be there the next year. And, they're all looking forward to that. And the kids are, teenagers or younger, and they are attached to the life they lead and the friends they have. And when their father announces that he's going to be moving the family to New York, it really kind of rocks their stability, and there's concern about what life is going to be like, and are they going to miss the fair and all of that stuff. And so at one point, the youngest sister, played by Margaret O'Brien, is very upset about this impending move, and her older sister, Judy Garland, tries to assuage her panic by singing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," which doesn't entirely work if you've seen the movie. But you get later versions where they really tone down the language here. When she's talking about we'll have to muddle through somehow. Like, this is a song about, it's not going to be great, but we're gonna make this work somehow. Yeah, but other versions you get later are really sand down those edges, and apparently the original lyrics were even darker, and Judy Garland was like, I'm not going to sing this to a child who is upset. Like, no, that is not, the character wouldn't do it. I'm not going to do it. So even what we're getting in the movie is already a somewhat softened version, but I think later covers of this soften it even further.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The original version was even more kind of despondent than the version in the movie. And so that original version was actually submitted to the Library of Congress for copyright. And so a few years ago, when government was functioning a little better than it might be today, they actually used to do blog posts on the Library of Congress, and one was highlighting this song, and they showed the original submitted copy, and then told the same story that Judy Garland was like, oh, not for me. We need to bring this down. And that copy did eventually get submitted for copyright several years later. And then, like you said, the muddle through somehow, I think it was Frank Sinatra, when they were propositioning him to cut a recording of it, and he was the one that said, no, this doesn't work. So actually went back to the original writer and had him write a third version of the song, which is that version, the Let Your Hearts Be Light, right? Instead of May It Be Your Last.
Right.
So I'll also say, you mentioned in your book that no vocalist has ever threatened Garland's ownership of this song. Personally, I think you're absolutely right. But do you have any idea how many have tried? How many cover songs exist of this?
I can't imagine, because I've heard so many. I'll say 150.
I went to secondhandsongs.com, which is a fantastic resource for looking at covers and who did what. Over 2,300 are in their catalog right now, between both the vocal and instrumental treatments.
I mean, look, I love the Ella Fitzgerald version. Don't get me wrong, but there are certain songs that I think kind of belong to one singer, and this is one of them.
So, Secondhand Songs does not agree with you about that point.
Oh,
so
okay.
they also have a rating system. So when you look up the version, they will tell you which one the best one is. So they ranked Judy Garland's as the 14th best version, which
Really?
I have some issues with. But there was an 11-way tie based on rating for the first place. That included the Carpenters. It included Lionel Richie. But do you want to know who the number one? You have any guess who the number one spot was?
Dean Martin. I don't know.
No, he wasn't in the top at all. It was the amazing version that came out in 1999 on the album Mary-Kate and Ashley's Cool Yule, A Christmas Party with Friends.
Okay, Secondhand Songs. We're done here.
So here's my assumption. My assumption is the site gets very few reviews, and so
Exactly.
one person who
It's
this is their
weighted.
favorite album, right, just completely wrecked the average there. But
They registered under countless email addresses.
yes, yeah, just had to pad the box a little bit. But
Mary Kate fan, Ashley fan, fan 1.
so I tried to find this album to listen to it. I didn't find it on streaming. I didn't look too hard though. I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't spend more than a few minutes on it.
Well,
But,
Kevin, it's clearly beloved, so I don't know why it's not just popping out everywhere.
But a weird little tidbit of history that I have to mention is that on Amazon, there were several reviews way back from 1999 because Amazon holds on to everything you've done forever.
Sure.
And people were saying they were upset when they bought it because it's called Cool Yule, whatever I said, A Christmas Party with Friends. And they don't name the friends on the album. The friends aren't listed on the credits on the physical one they had a photo of, but the friends do most of the singing. Mary-Kate and Ashley do very little of the singing. And so people were lamenting that. And then someone registered an account under the name Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen to apologize that their tour schedule was busy, their filming schedule was busy, and therefore they had to get some other people on the album with them because they just didn't have time in their schedule to do a full album's worth of recording, but wanted people to have some holiday cheer out there, which is just bewildering.
That's when you know you're a brand, you know?
Right, yep.
and now they're selling like $25,000 cashmere sweaters,
Right,
so
yeah.
good on them. They got the last laugh.
And then finally, before we move on from this one, you also mentioned in your book the fact that this song, in the context of this movie, appears in the 2005 film The Family Stone.
Yes.
Yeah, so last year I did an episode of The Sounds of Christmas with Ken Kessler, and we were picking out our favorite musical moments from films. And so a little bit of foreshadowing. 3 of the songs you picked were also on my list from last year, and 2 more of the movies you picked, but a different song, were on my list. And we'll get to those when we get to them. But for folks who haven't seen it, I'm not saying it's a great Christmas movie, but I absolutely love that scene. You know, it's a big New England family Christmas. Blow up happens at dinner, and kind of everyone goes their separate ways to process the evening and deal with their stuff. And you've got Elizabeth Reeser, her character, just finds out her husband's probably not going to make it in to Christmas. And so she sits down and watches Meet Me in St. Louis. And it's specifically that scene. And so I'm sure there's a film term for it, but it's when the music is on the TV in it, and then it breaks out of the TV and it just becomes the background music.
It goes from diegetic to non-diegetic.
Yeah. Yeah, so it does that, and it pulls it out of the TV and just plays it as it cuts between all the different family members and them, just kind of like in Meet Me in St. Louis. Not everything's smiley and happy, and we don't know what the future's going to hold, but we're together and we're trying to do it, and just kind of picks up that somber tone. So again, not the greatest movie in the world, but I do really enjoy that scene and think they did it justice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit stolen valor, but
Yes.
Definitely they made an effort.
I guess that's the point. If you're going to steal something, do something with it.
Yeah, steal from the best.
For number 3, you've got The Bells of St. Mary by Bing Crosby from The Bells of St. Mary.
With your inspiration, we never will fail.
Yeah, I didn't want to go crazy on the Bing Crosby here, but dang it, he just keeps popping up. So yeah, this is a sequel to Going My Way, which had been a huge hit for him. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor for that one. And so, he brings back his popular priest character, and this time he's paired with Ingrid Bergman as a savvy nun who is trying to get a rich guy to donate land that he wants to turn into a parking lot to the church so that the nuns can open a new school. The rich guy is played by the same actor who plays Clarence the Angel in It's a Wonderful Life. Yep. So this is you've got kind of an all-star situation here. And the Bells of St. Mary's, people may recall, seeing the title, it is the movie that is showing in the theater in Bedford Falls at the end of It's a Wonderful Life when Jimmy Stewart is running down the street yelling, "Merry Christmas, movie house."
Yep. That's a fantastic Jimmy Stewart, too.
Thank you.
I thought about it when I was putting all this down, too. It's kind of an interesting time in recorded music here, too, because your first three tracks were early to mid-'40s, so we're still a few years away from the advent of the LP. Columbia released that in 1948. So at this point, all this great music that's in all these movies, to get it, it's going to be on a 78, which is one song per side. And so very few, compared to even the 50s and 60s, movies had a full soundtrack release. So The Bells of St. Mary's, for example, even though there were a ton of songs in the movie, only 4 songs were released as an album. And so it was a pair of 78s, one on each side back to back, and it was called the Selections from the Bells of St. Mary's. And likewise, Meet Me in St. Louis was a 3-disc album. So even though there were 20 plus great songs in that film,
right, they
had to cherry pick it down to 6 to release.
Now, you would know this as a music guy. Is the reason that we call a long playing record an album because they used to release those, like as you said, the 3 or 4 discs of a record like that within 2 hardcovers, and so it's like a photo album?
Yeah, so album was kind of, and I'm sure people who are way more into it than me are going to correct this, but album was generally anything that was more than a single disc pre the LP. So that would be an album. So these would all be albums. And then once you could fit an album's worth of music on a single disc, an LP, an album, you just kind of and record, you just use all 3 of those terms just interchangeably because everything just quickly moved over that way. So I will say Holiday Inn was one great exception at the time. They released all 12 songs from it on a 6-disc set. And so if you think about that, so someone in 1942 who bought the Holiday Inn album and wants to listen to it, you have to have someone standing next to your record player with this stack of discs, and every 3 minutes flipping it over or taking it off and putting the next one on. It was a serious deal to listen to an album from start to finish then.
Right, but when it's being in Irving, Berlin, you put every one of those songs out.
Yeah, and you do, and you get your child to stand there next to it, and they do they do the thing for you.
Give them a nickel.
Yep. Hey, this is Future Kevin checking in. While I was editing this episode, I realized that instead of answering Alonso's question, I went on a complete tangent about the transition from the 78 to the LP. You see, right before Alonso and I recorded, I was working on the next episode of our History of the Christmas album series, which starts with the advent of the 78 and ends with the arrival of the LP. So I'm going to blame it on that rather than my own inability to have a linear conversation. To answer Alonso's question directly, yes, the usage of the word album did originally come from photo albums. When 78s were first introduced, they came in simple brown paper sleeves. As their popularity increased, photo album producers, eyeing an opportunity, began making bound books of empty record sleeves, and calling them albums. If you collected CDs in the 90s, you probably owned at least one of those Case Logic binders. You might have even kept it under the seat in your car, so it could slide out and get lodged under your brake pedal at inopportune times. Anyway, these albums were the 1910 precursor. Soon after, recording companies jumped on the trend and began releasing their own box sets of 78s. Orchestral performances and movie soundtracks were some of the earliest works to get these album releases, which generally ranged from 2 to 6 records. And the name stuck from there, eventually morphing into a more general term for any collection of recorded works released together, regardless of the medium. Okay, back to past Kevin and Alonso. All right, moving on to number 4. And this one I think is a great example of what you said earlier about just a timeless song and folks not knowing where it came from. It's Bob Hope with Silver Bells from the Lemon Drop Kid.
Children laughing, people passing, meeting smile after smile, and on every street corner you hear.
And yeah, the Lemon Drop Kid as a movie, it's not one that I like really go into much in the book. It's not one that I return to as a Christmas movie, although it does take place during the season and it has a definitely sort of redemptive story arc. But yeah, I just wanted to throw it in because I think a lot of people don't know that Silver Bells is a song from a movie. It so quickly became part of the established canon of American Christmas songs. But yeah, it was first performed by Bing's best friend Bob Hope and Marilyn Maxwell in the Lemon Drop Kid. And I think I heard on the Christmas Past podcast that apparently the songwriter had originally called it Tinkle Bells.
Yep.
And his wife had to inform him, yeah, that's a double entendre you really don't want to mess with. And so it became Silver Bells instead.
Oh, absolutely. Moving on to number 5, we have the Holly and the Ivy from the Holly and the Ivy by the choir of King's College, Cambridge.
Yeah, this one, I wasn't sure who sang the version that's in the movie. But I just sort of hunted around. I thought that was a lovely version. But it is a traditional carol, more popular in the UK than the US, I think. But centuries old, obviously. And the film is a very lovely adaptation of a play that had been a big hit on the West End in London. It's been referred to as sort of the classic kind of what they... When you study drama and they tell you about the well-made play, it's a play that like it folds up very nicely. There's some emotional explosions, but by the end of it, everybody's sort of figured things out and everyone's amends have been made and people are ready to move on with their lives. And so it is this story about a vicar and his children who are gathering for Christmas, and they've all got issues. One daughter who's been taking care of him wants to get married to this guy who's about to go to Brazil for work, but she feels like she can't leave the father by himself. There's the sister who lives in London and has a seemingly glamorous life. She's like a fashion reporter, but she has a secret tragedy. And then there's the son who's currently a soldier, but also grappling with, not wanting to follow his father's footsteps. And, a few other relatives get thrown in the mix as well. And, it's one of those movies you watch, you're like, well, this was a play. Everyone's in these rooms all the time, but it's superbly acted and just beautifully done all around. And to be honest, I didn't know this song that well because it is, I think, more of a staple in Britain than it is here. But I think it's really lovely. And because of my exposure to the movie, it's a song that I've sort of made more of a part of my Christmas celebration.
Oh, that's awesome. And you picked a great version.
Thanks.
For folks that don't know, the Choir of King's College has been around since like the mid 1400s. And to this day, they still sing daily in the chapel, which was their primary function this entire time. And they've produced a lot of recorded music.
Their early 78s from the 1500s were staggering.
Yeah. Yeah, since I think they first recorded in 1929, and they have over 100 albums out since then. And it's really funny because for being a 500-plus-year-old choir, they are extremely into modern techniques with their recording quality. So they have released albums on Super Audio, so SACD, Blu-ray audio. They've got Dolby Atmos mixes of their choral performances.
Nice.
They've actually started their own recording company in like the last decade-ish, and they put their regular choral services up on their website. That's a kind of a fascinating place to land for a 500-year-old choir.
They're keeping it cutting edge.
Yeah. Moving on to number 6, we have Snow by Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, and Trudy Stevens from White Christmas.
Snow, I long to clear a path and lift a spade of snow.
Snow, to see a great big man entirely made of snow.
So, yeah, I couldn't skip White Christmas, the movie, but since we'd already done the song, this is I think the other song in the film that is the closest to evoking a Christmas, so many Christmas songs are just winter songs, Baby It's Cold Outside and I've Got My Love to Keep Me Warm and Winter Wonderland. Never mentioned Christmas, but you throw in enough snow and you're in good shape. So, yeah, I thought Snow would work. And what's fascinating about the soundtrack of this movie is that only in the last couple of years could you buy a CD, and I think this year you can buy finally the vinyl, with the version that is included in the film.
Yeah.
Because, Bing Crosby, of course, Decca Records, it was like his label, basically. So, of course, they're going to put out the soundtrack. But Rosemary Clooney, at the time, was a Columbia exclusive. So she goes off and does her own Rosemary Clooney Sings Songs from White Christmas album for her own label. The official quote-unquote soundtrack for White Christmas has Bing Crosby, has Danny Kaye, has Trudy Stevens, who was the singing voice for Vera Ellen. And then they just had to throw in a ringer to do the Rosemary Clooney part, so they got a young up-and-comer named Peggy Lee. Yep. But if you wanted to hear the movie version, you had to see the movie. That was the only place you could get it. And then finally, literally in the 2020s, somebody has put out the original soundtrack, and the CD is great because you get the actual soundtrack of the movie versions of the songs. You get that Decca soundtrack, you get the Clooney album, and for good measure, they also throw in the Holiday Inn soundtrack.
Yeah. So the movie version, obviously, but then the Decca release versus the Columbia release, it is interesting because they are quite a bit different records. For the official soundtrack where they brought Peggy Lee in, it was the Joseph J. Lilly's orchestra that did the whole background music, so you couldn't use that either. So coming over to Columbia Records, they got Percy Faith and Paul Weston and their respective orchestras, and they provided all the backing music for Rosemary Clooney's version. So if you have the time and you really want to sit down and listen to 3 different versions of each of the songs from it, it's an interesting listen if you're so inclined to that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Clooney does the sisters number with her own sister, Betty, on her record.
on her record, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Then we're going to take a hard pivot away from the direction we've been going for number 7, and it's Hooray for Santa Claus by Milton DeLugg from Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
When we hear sleigh bells ring, our hearts go ting-a-ling, 'cause there'll be presents under the tree. Hooray for Santa Claus! Now all year long at the North Pole, he's busy making toys, but he knows just what you're doing, so you better be good girls and boys.
Yeah, this is, I think, it is a song that is both grating and wonderful. There is something about, I always remember for a while they tried doing a show called like American Juniors or something. Yep. It was a spinoff. And I remember you could tell Simon Cowell just did not want to be there. And at one point he made some comment about the sound of children singing. And so, you have this kids choir talking about, it's SANTACLAUS, hooray for Santa Claus.
Yeah, you get the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse chanting in there.
Absolutely, yeah. But, it is a song that really grows on me, especially if you get to listen to the non-film versions. Al Hurt does a really great instrumental version where he's just trumpeting like nobody's business. And then years later, a band called Sloppy Seconds did a punk version that was pretty fun. But even the original, even with those children, I have a soft spot for it. The movie's very silly, but very watchable. And the song is kind of silly, but very listenable.
It's got that defining 60s groove to it. And they have the sleigh bell shaking over the top of it and everything.
You could lay this track down on the kids in Charlie Brown Christmas dancing on stage, and it would totally work.
Yeah, absolutely. Only other thing I was going to mention there is Milton DeLugg also composed one other Christmas song. He didn't perform it, but it was Shake Hands with Santa Claus for Louis Prima, about a decade before this movie came out.
No kidding. I did not know
If you
that.
want some candy, I'll bring you the candy. Shake hands with Santa Claus. I love you, and I'm gonna bring some candy and flowers and everything.
Moving on to number 8, we have Do You Know How Christmas Trees Are Grown by Nina from On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Do you know how Christmas trees are grown? They need sunshine. Sunshine can't grow Christmas trees alone. They need raindrops.
Yeah, this is a fun one just because I think maybe people don't know that there's a 007 Christmas movie. The one with George Lazenby is also set at Christmas time, and they lean into it partially because this song is in it, but also because there's a whole thing where Blofeld's diabolical scheme involves these beautiful Christmas presents that he's given to these like hypnotized women who are going to take them to various corners of the earth and, you know, destroy all the crops or something. Like that's the nefarious plan. But yeah, this song, Nina was the nom de record of Nina von Pallandt, who has a fascinating career. Like she turns up in Robert Altman's A Wedding, and in Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye, and I think also had some weird connection to like the fake Howard Hughes diaries in the 70s. Like she was sort of an international figure of notoriety.
Yeah, I think she had to come in like not like a disposition, but yeah, she had to come testify. She had to come in and like testify during that.
And it's funny that in the song in the movie, it's kind of buried. Like you have to sort of look for it. But there's an episode of the Carol Burnett show where she brings out like, I think a kid's choir to sing this song.
Yeah. And they all sit around her on the floor and
So they were, the thing with the 007 songs were always sort of intended to promote the movie, which is, like there's the famous story of Tom Jones saying, "What is a thunderball?" And they're like, "Just sing it like you knew what it meant," And so I guess they couldn't work On Her Majesty's Secret Service into either of the big songs from this movie. The main one being Louis Armstrong's "We Have All the Time in the World." But yeah, that when Carol Burnett is introducing this segment, she mentions the movie. So like this was their way of getting a plug.
Yeah. Not related to the Christmas song, but I'm just going to mention because I have the platform for it. George Lansbury, he did a good job. I know he gets beat up sometimes for this movie, but
he is an underrated Bond. I think he's really terrific. Look, Diana Rigg, best Bond female lead of the whole series, as far as I'm concerned, and the fact that they have a genuine love story where they get married and everything is pretty amazing. And Danny Peary writes about this in one of the Cult Movies books where people say, oh, if Connery had been in this one, it would be, hands down the best of the Bond films. But it would have been different because part of what Lazenby does in this movie is like when he disguises himself as a, genealogy expert to get into Blofeld's compound, he's playing like a dorky, foppish, like glasses and kilt and roughly shirt guy. Connery would never have done that in a million years.
Yeah, you'd lose that. You'd lose the entire scene after Draco's party where they're like on their romance thing where it's cutting to them doing everything while you've got the Louis Armstrong song playing over it. It would be a much different film. Yeah,
it's a great Bond film, and the stunts are amazing. I think Steven Soderbergh actually did kind of an unofficial recut that you can watch online. I've been meaning to dig into that, but I think it's great. And if you've skipped it because you're like, oh, it's not Connery, it's not Moore, it's not who is this guy, give it a shot.
Yeah, and it was his first movie. He was like a model before that, so he came in not having
margarine
any
commercials.
Yeah, exactly. Came in not having any acting chops, and good job, George.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 9, we have a set of songs. We have I Like Life, Father Christmas, Thank You Very Much, and A Christmas Carol, all from the 1970s Scrooge musical.
I like pouring the wine and why not? Life's a pleasure that I deny not.
Yes, I chickened out on this one. I couldn't figure out one song because I like the score so much. But then I remembered that at the end of the film, they reprise most of the major numbers. And so I thought, well, we'll just do all the reprises and that'll be like one nice little lengthy cut there. This is probably my personal favorite of the Christmas Carol adaptations. Like I appreciate what's great about Alistair Sim and what's great about the Muppets and all these different versions, but this one I really love. I'm a big Leslie Brickus fan who wrote the screenplay, wrote the songs, and I think Albert Finney is a dynamite Scrooge. Yeah. For one thing, he's one of the few actors who plays Scrooge as a young man and as an old man. And so you get like young, sexy, Albert Finney, romancing Belle. And it's like, well, yeah, sure. And then to see him turn into this sort of stooped, selfish figure, I think really gives it a little more emotional heft. And the songs are dynamite. And so this ending where, it's basically the Scrooge's Christmas morning, the, you there, boy, what day is it? Like they do all the songs again, and they're like filling the streets of London with singing and dancing and handbell choirs and you name it. And it's exhilarating. I attended a screening years ago. The director is no longer with us. The great Ronald Neame, and he was doing a talk beforehand, and somebody asked, when you look at the movie now, is there anything that you would change or do differently? And he goes, I think I might trim that end bit a little. And people in the audience were like, no!
Revolting.
Like, yes, they were just like, don't you touch a frame of it, old man, So clearly I'm not the only one that really loves the climax of Scrooge. So these songs are a little taste of all the stuff that you get throughout.
Oh, that's awesome. Kind of like White Christmas, this one had some issues with clearance on the songs too that is the reason it's never actually been released on CD. So I think the only physical version of the soundtrack is the original 1970s version from Columbia Records.
I own it.
You own it. Nice. The VHS and the DVDs, at least the songs as they're presented in the movie are intact, but even the recent Blu-ray one has had the overture from the beginning stripped out of it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and so
I think sometimes when they show it on TCM, they still have the overture.
They still have.
I could be wrong.
So as far as physical media goes, that record that you own is the one.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I treasure it.
For number 10, we have Hazy Shade of Winter by the Bangles from Less Than Zero.
Look around, leaves are brown, and the sky is a hazy shade of winter. Hear the Salvation Army band.
Yeah, so Less Than Zero is a Christmas movie. It is, the novel by Bret Easton Ellis on which it is based is about a character who has gone to college back east and comes home to Los Angeles for Christmas and is dealing with various crises in the lives of his friends. And it is one of those great movies that loves to kind of play with the artificiality of an LA Christmas. Shane Black loves this. If you've seen like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang or The Other Guys or not The Other Guys, The Wrong Guys, The Nice Guys, whichever one that is, the one with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. And even Lethal Weapon, this notion of like this sun-baked patch of earth that has like, little fake snow on things and twinkling lights or whatever, despite the fact that we're in the tropics. There's a lot of that happening in Less Than Zero. And this is, again, I think we have accommodated so many songs about winter into the Christmas canon. I don't see why we don't work in this one. And if you tell me that it thematically has nothing to do with the holiday, I would say to you, look, if Hallelujah can become a Christmas song, then all bets are off.
Yeah, you at least have winter in the title.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
it's halfway there.
Yeah, and just the entire soundtrack for Less Than Zero was kind of a big deal at the time. Mm. So the Bangles had actually been performing this song since the early 80s, but never recorded it. So when they were approached to do a song for the soundtrack, they were like, oh, this is our opportunity. Let's get in the studio and do this. You had a young Rick Rubin producing it for him.
Yeah.
Relatively young Rick Rubin producing it for him. And he also did most of the other tracks. So that movie and then its soundtrack were the first time you ever heard Going Back to Cali by LL Cool J. It was the first time Bring the Noise from Public Enemy came out, and a handful of other songs that then went on to have their own releases and be wildly popular.
Yeah, I went to an event at the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles when the first of the the lead singer of Susanna Hoffs.
Yeah.
Susanna Hoffs and Matthew Sweet put out a series of CDs of cover versions of songs called Under the Covers. And they did like a little, they played some of it and they did some live performing and then they took some questions. And I asked her about this cover because it was probably the most well-known cover that the Bangles released. And she talked about how she used to work this office job for like her aunt and her uncle in the summers. And she would just be in this sort of like storeroom listening to K-Rock all day. Yep. And they would play the original Simon and Garfunkel version, and it just sort of like eventually, once the band got rolling, that it was a song they wanted to cover.
Yeah, and I think it either tied or it is the highest charting song they've ever had. It ended up at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 after the movie came out.
Yeah, I believe it. It probably would be either that or like Walk Like an Egyptian. I guess.
Yeah. Moving on to number 11, we have Put a Little Love in Your Heart by Annie Lennox and Al Green from Scrooged.
You see it's getting late, oh please don't hesitate. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place.
Yeah, this is a song I think that, has a history before this movie that isn't Christmas related at all, but I think, for a lot, I was actually introduced to this song by this movie.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of people who come upon this film in their youth, it's going to be the first time they've heard it either. And so that sort of makes it a de facto Christmas song because message wise, it works as a holiday tune. It's saying the thing that so many Christmas songs are making or are saying rather. And, Annie Lennox and Al Green, how did those two not work together more after this? Because this is an inspired pairing. I love this song.
Yeah, this one was also one on my list from the show I did with Ken. Scrooged was a movie that I saw on, in December when they played it on network TV and they just took a knife and edited it all apart so it would, fit in the 2-hour window with all the commercials.
Right.
And it wasn't until a handful of years ago, my wife and I just started watching it. And this is one of the ones we watch every year. When it comes up at Christmas time, it's become one of my favorites. And the whole closing montage,
the redemption speech.
The whole monologue he goes through to get there is just fantastic. And like you said, this was the first time I heard the song too. The Jackie DeShannon original was like 20 years or before this new version was recorded. So it was a hit in the late 60s. But I did see that in 1979, so 9 years before this movie came out, DeShannon performed this song at the Music for UNICEF concert that was the UN General Assembly hosted this big concert to raise awareness and money for UNICEF, and she closed it down with this song. And so I have no proof of it, but I'd like to think that someone who was working on Scrooge was aware of that or had saw that and
remembered
that moment and was like, we're doing our own twisted version of that. We've got this, big spectacle that we've built here and we need a way to close it down. Let's see if we can get some, fantastic artists to cover this thing. And
well played.
Yeah. Moving on from that, we have number 12. This is the main title to Home Alone by John Williams.
So it's what's been fun in talking about the book with people is, there's something about the Christmas movies that are meaningful to you is obviously so subjective and it's based on a lot of different factors, things you were exposed to by your parents or by other people or, obviously I think age plays a big part of it. And I just had a very lengthy conversation with the host of Holidays After Dark about the fact that I was 23 when Home Alone came out. So it is not a movie that I saw as a kid and really embraced and carried with me through life. And I get that is generations after me, continue to do that. I attended one of the Macaulay Culkin Home Alone screenings last year. So I understand the fandom and I understand that for a lot of people, they don't remember a world in which Home Alone and its sequels didn't exist. But I was way past that. And so honestly, I didn't see Home Alone until I started researching the first edition of the book. I was like, well, I guess I got to watch this now. So I don't have that kind of nostalgia tinged or like lifelong commitment to it, but I see what people see in it. I get the appeal. And, I think that I put it in a category with like It's a Wonderful Life and a Christmas Carol in terms of being these kind of redemption arcs where people are given a glimpse at an alternate world that they think they want and then realize that they don't, and they have to, sort of be kinder and more understanding and accepting of the world they are in. But it also gives kids that fantasy of agency that not only do I get the house to myself, but I'm going to fend off invaders. I'm going to be the hero. It is perfect for like that period of life. You want to see that kind of story. And so while it's not a movie that I have great affection for, boy, do I love that John Williams score. And when I hear that main title theme, I'm like, yep, it's Christmas.
Yeah, it's almost got like at least to me, like a music box quality to it. But so I'm a couple years younger, so I was about 9 when this movie came out, and having the same name as Macaulay Culkin's character in it, Kevin! So I endured that for a year, right? And so I have very mixed emotions about it. Like we were super excited to see the movie, but then I had everyone yelling Kevin at me for months and months and months after it came out.
Think how Macaulay Culkin felt.
Yeah, right. You mentioned in your book too that when this was released, no one thought it was going to be a hit. They were just putting out a Christmas movie, and then it just caught fire and took off.
Exploded, yeah. In fact, this was one of a couple of movies at that moment that Warner Brothers was supposed to make, and then the budget got a little too high for their blood, and they backed out. And then 20th Century Fox came in. I think the other one might have been Edward Scissorhands. But yeah, it became like not just the biggest movie of 1990, but I think at one point it was the third highest grossing film ever made.
Yeah, I have a distinct childhood memory that we went to the theater opening weekend, so probably Saturday morning, and it was either my mother or my grandmother we were going with. So we were going to get matinee tickets because $7 or $7.50 or whatever a weekend evening ticket was. There's no way you pay that much money to go to the theater. So, we had to get in for a 2 or 3 o'clock showing, and we showed up at noon, and they were all sold out like well into the evening. And I don't think we'd ever experienced that. And so I remember, we'll just come back next weekend. So we came back the following weekend about the same time, probably Saturday again, and they had increase the screens. Like I'd looked in the newspaper ahead of time and saw like how many showings they had on it, and we're like, all right, we're getting in. We got there, and there was a line of people from the ticket office in the front around the side of the front of the theater, and we parked the car and walked up there, and I remember someone making the comment, I wonder what they're all going to see. And someone comes out of that line on the way by, and they're like, if you're looking for Home Alone, they're out for the day, And
this was 1990. This was when you had to show up at the theater to buy a ticket. You couldn't just order it online and pick your seat and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I think the ticket office probably opened at 10 or 11, and by noon they had booked out, however many, probably 4 screens, 5 screens of it. And so it was a few more weeks before we finally got in. But I will say that like, it's like you won the lottery then, because it was your turn to go see the movie. So that one I thoroughly enjoyed as a kid.
That's a great memory.
This particular song was also one of my favorite musical Christmas movie moments. This is One More Sleep Till Christmas, sung by Kermit the Frog from the Muppet Christmas Carol.
The world has got a smile today, the world has got a glow. There's no such thing as strangers when a stranger says hello. And everyone is family, we're having so much fun. After all, there's only one more sleep till Christmas.
This is a song that I've really come to like a lot out of context of the film, strangely enough. Like as just sort of a standalone thing and as a kind of anticipatory song about Christmas. I'm a lifelong Muppet fan. I mean, like I was born in 1967, so I was among the very first like 2-3-year-olds to be glued to Sesame Street every day. The OG Muppet show in syndication was the one show we were allowed to have the TV on during dinner. so we didn't miss it, you know. So like I have always adored them. Went to see the Muppet movie opening night, and this one, you know, I love the movie, and I think it's done really well. And Michael Caine, spot on, perfect, couldn't be better. But like, as much as I love the Paul Williams songs from the Muppet movie, I feel like they're a little repetitive in this one. Yeah. Like my friend Kurt Holman, who I saw the film with, who became a film critic himself, made the joke afterwards. He goes, "It's like every song in this movie is like la 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 Christmas." Yeah. and if you look at More Sleep Till Christmas, and then you also look at what's the other song that's very similar to it in this soundtrack. Like When It's Christmas, or whatever that song is called, they're kind of identical. I mean, it's the kind of thing where you start humming one and then you're humming the other one. And so I wish I loved the songs as much as everything else in A Muppet Christmas Carol, but I do love this song because the idea of not just Christmas, like I have a friend who works in television, and when he's looking forward to the end of a season, he'll be like, 6 more sleeps, 4 more sleeps, you know, like that's how he knows that it's going to be done. And so this song has occupied a space in my heart, even though in the original go round, it's kind of like, these songs, I don't know.
Yeah. For me, being an 80s kid, this and Muppet Treasure Island were peak Muppets for me. So I loved both of these from the time they came out. But completely get what you say, or what you said about the repetitiveness of it. This song, same thing, out of context. In my mind, it's always been kind of how, like, if a child could articulate it, they feel going into Christmas Eve night. So, you know, it's you're right on the precipice of Christmas. It's right there. You just got to get to bed, have that last sleep. You're going to wake up and it's Christmas. But of course, being a kid, you're also so jacked up and excited by that concept.
Of course. Toss and turn.
And like you hit on Michael Caine's performance, I saw a interview with him one time where he said that when they offered him the job, because I think he was like, they had interviewed or they had tested a couple other actors before him. And when they got to him and wanted him to do it, he told them, that's fine, but I'm going to play this as if I was performing in the Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company. So there are no Muppets around me. There are other actors, you know, and I'm just going to play it straight dramatic. And I think that's what makes that piece perfect in that movie.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely the secret sauce. There's not a wink to be found in that performance.
No, not at all. And then back to back, the next one on your list here was also one of my favorite musical Christmas movie moments. This is What's This by Danny Elfman from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
What's this? What's this? There's color everywhere. What's this? There's white things in the air. What's this? I can't believe my eyes. I must be dreaming. Wake up, Jack. This isn't fair. What's this?
Yeah, there is, you know, there's something really special about, you know, and this is a concept that comes up in pop songs or different things, but the idea of songs that are a list, you know, that are a list of things. And this is basically just like a list of observations and trying to piece together what it all means and what's going on. All that and kettle drum, like, and I'm in.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite moments of this movie too. And again, this is one that I think if a child could contextualize, like seeing something new at Christmas for the first time, or just, you know, the first time seeing the Rockefeller tree, or going into like a department store all decorated up to the nines for it. And like you said, they're looking around and just seeing everything and trying to figure out what's it all mean and how does it all fit together. Yeah.
One of the things that I really love, especially toward the holiday season, is YouTube has these amazing collections of old Christmas TV commercials, you know, and I gravitated obviously towards the 70s and 80s because that's my childhood, but they've got 90s and later. And there's something about those that it's so evocative because you've got 60 seconds to say Christmas. And so every single thing is like, here comes the horse-drawn sleigh to the house full of 4 generations of people, and there's lights, and everybody's sitting in front of the fireplace, and they're passing around a bowl of M&Ms. Boom, we're done. You know, and there's something about the concentration of all of that holiday stuff in those commercials that I find really appealing because it's just being injected right into your brain. And what's this is somebody sort of having that moment for the first time and like just even trying to catalog it, let alone contextualize it, you know?
was listening to an interview several years ago with Danny Elfman, and he was talking about the writing process. He was saying at the time he wrote these songs, there wasn't a script to the movie yet. So Tim Burton kind of knew what he wanted to do to hand over to Selleck to make the thing. And he had some, not even storyboards, but just kind of rough drawings of kind of thematically how things were going to look. Yeah. And so he would go over to, I think it was Elfman's girlfriend's house at the time where he was staying, and he would just narrate a scene to him. And in real time, while he was narrating the scene, Danny Elfman at the piano would, try to come up with the right emotion and pacing for it, and then start coming up with lyrics on the fly. And they just kept doing this, and eventually got to a point where he said it was a very just fluid thing where Tim would shout out, "I want a verse about a shrunken head," or whatever in here. And yeah, got it. I'll weave that in. And so they got done with it. And then Elfman went into the recording booth and recorded all the parts except Sally's singing parts as a reference track for the real artists who were going to sing all these songs. And then they sent it out and did all the recordings. And then Elfman's own recordings, because he does the singing voice of Jack, were the last ones. So he went into the studio to do them. And he said the whole time, Tim was there, and he kept saying, go back and listen to that reference track you made. And he said about half of them they threw away and just went with that original recorded in the garage reference track. And that's what you see in the movie and what's been out on the soundtrack, because just that very first take was the perfect take of it.
Yeah, there is that thing of there are filmmakers who don't like to do more than about 2 or 3 takes because it loses whatever that snap of freshness is. So I could see, of all people, Danny Elfman, after all this time with Oingo Boingo and whatnot, just I'm sure it was just genius spouting out there.
Moving to number 15, we have "Baby It's Cold Outside" by Zooey Deschanel and Leon Redbone from Elf.
I really can't
But
stay.
baby, it's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
Baby, it's cold outside.
Now, obviously, Leon Redbone pops up early in the film as the sort of Burl Ives figure, the narrating snowman. And it's Will Ferrell that sings the song with Zooey Deschanel in the film, but they don't do the whole thing.
No.
So I thought, we'll go with the soundtrack version where she sings it with Leon Redbone. The "Baby It's Cold Outside" incidentally also comes from a movie, not this one. It comes from it's something like Neptune's Daughter. I want to say it's an Esther Williams film, and in that version there are 4 people singing it. So Esther Williams is doing it with Ricardo Montalban, and Ricardo Montalban is being the seductive one. And then there's sort of a second version where it's Betty Garrett and I want to say Red Buttons, or no, Red Skelton, sorry. And Betty Garrett is being is on the make, and he's the pursuer, exactly, and he's being the pursued. So the dialogue about this song and what it represents in terms of a male-female dynamic, I wish I had it handy, but there was a great piece on a feminist website where this woman did a really long thing kind of breaking down what's happening, who's saying what and why and when. And the ultimate point that she was making was, this isn't a song about rape culture. This is a song about flirting that rape culture has ruined.
I think my wife had me read the same thing because she was breaking down what were common phrases at the time, like "what'd you put in this drink?" wasn't what we contextualize what'd you put in this drink as today. It was just a slang term of, this is a strong drink. And the point was more that it was a woman who wanted to stay with this man, but was listing off the social issues with doing that were going to befall her, and which is definitely a much different take than
And meanwhile, not leaving and asking for a comb, and there's a push pull where it is incumbent upon her in the particularly patriarchal society of the mid-century to at least pretend like she's not interested, even though she clearly is, but she's saying this stuff so that at least later she can be like, well, I did say XYZ and, and I didn't leave. So, so I think the song is richer than people give it credit for.
Oh, absolutely. And then, so Elf was also one of my favorite musical moments, but I didn't go with the shower singing song. I went with a non-Christmas song, Pennies from Heaven by Louis Prima, which is the song that plays when Buddy Will Ferrell's character comes out of the Lincoln Tunnel and sees New York for the first time. And I guess I'm just on a theme because this is the exact same thing. It's just someone. So this is a person who sees Christmas every day of the year. So that is his normal, even, kill.
That's the bar.
Yeah. And now he sees New York, and the things he does aren't necessarily particularly Christmassy either. It's walking into a coffee shop and a barber shop and taking flyers and a revolving door and loose gum. But it's so exciting and so new. And Pennies from Heaven is just a great backing for, running around and just experiencing, that magic
Delight.
of newness. Yep. Also mentioned that another outstanding soundtrack. This one was interesting because the movie came out in 2003, which is right about that time, like CD sales started to falter. Illegitimate, streaming was happening at the time, but we're in that transition point. But this album, at least about a decade ago, which was the last figure I found for it, was the second highest selling physical soundtrack to a Christmas-related film behind The Polar Express. And in 2010 or 11, they'd sold 700,000 copies at that point, with the thought being, too, that were we not right in the period we were with physical media starting to wobble, might have gone on quite a bit farther than that in the sales.
Huh. I'm sure it probably, does a healthy, like, online, trafficking as well.
Yeah, like you said, this is obviously the most popular song for it, but you've also got Leon Redbone's Christmas Island. You've got a probably obscure at the time version of Lena Horne doing Let It Snow that this movie repopularized. You've got like Ray Charles's version of Winter Wonderland on there. It's it's pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I love that version of Let It Snow, and luckily somebody at SiriusXM Holiday Traditions agrees with me.
That's awesome. For number 16, we have Christmas Everywhere by Fran Alexander from Christmas Again. And that's Christmas Again, the 2014 film, not to be confused with Christmas Again, the 2021 Disney Channel movie.
It is Christmas everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. It is Christmas everywhere, everywhere. Hear the tinkle, 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 and the jingle, jingle, jingle. See the people, how they mingle in the wintry air. For it's Christmas. Christmas. It's Christmas. Christmas. It's Christmas everywhere. Hark the herald angels sing. Glory to the newborn King.
Yes, this is the indie with a comma in it. I love Christmas Again. I think it's a beautiful, sort of melancholy film, but with hope. That I remember really loving when it came out. It's still one of my favorites. And I had never heard the song Christmas Everywhere, which they play over the closing credits. And apparently, most people had never heard of that song until it came up in this movie, because when you Google it, you get a lot of references to Christmas Again. But it was recorded for an independent Fort Wayne, Indiana record label called Emerald Records. And it's a great song.
Yeah, it was just a super obscure single from the late 50s from them. The same artist, Fran Alexandra, did another song, One Star, on the backside of it.
Yes.
So you're going to know way more about this than me. Is this just the limitations of licensing music when you're doing an indie film, that you've got to get creative, and so you've got a mood you're trying to set, and you need to go dig and find something that will fit in your budget, and that's how you end up with gems like this?
It might be. I've never found an interview with the director where he talks about it. So I don't know if this is like this single that he had that his parents owned and he just, finally got a chance to use it, or it was just sort of on a list somewhere. I mean, it seems to me that he must have brought it in, because I don't think anybody was pushing it. There wasn't like some label back in, hey, we have this in our back catalog, you should use it. I have a hunch he found it and did whatever legal, stuff was necessary to clear it for the film. But yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful song, and I'm glad that at least some people know it now because of this wonderful movie.
Yep. Absolutely. For number 17, it's White Winter Hymnal by Fleet Foxes from Love the Coopers.
I was following the pack, all swallowed in their coats, with scarves of red tied round their throats to keep their little heads from falling in the snow. And I turned around and
Yeah, Love the Coopers is a movie I like more than a lot of other people do, I think. But I think it's quite charming. It's quite funny. Great cast, Diane Keaton, John Goodman, June Squibb, early Timothée Chalamet appearance. But what's also interesting about it is that it's got this, whoever was the music supervisor on it, like chef's kiss. They really put together some really great stuff. Some, Alison Krauss and Robert Plant and Sting and different performers. And this Fleet Foxes song was already a year or two old by the time it popped up in this movie, but it was my first exposure to it, and it's one that I really like a lot, so I wanted to include it.
So, this song came out right in that wave of indie folk music in the 2010-ish. Same time Zooey Deschanel was doing her She and Him band with M. Ward and all that hipster-centric stuff you would hear at a Starbucks at the time.
Ukuleles and mandolins and whatnot.
And I'm not disparaging that, because at the time I was totally into it. I owned this album. I owned their follow-up album, Helplessness Blues, but never thought of it as a Christmas song until... Pentatonics covered it on one of their Christmas albums. And so I think it was after my son was born, so probably 2014, 15, one of their albums, they do this song and they cut a music video. In addition to the a cappella, they do this crazy like hand clap thing where they're like slapping their thighs and clapping each other's hands in a row, like out on a log in the forest.
I was following the pack, all swallowed in their coats, with scarves of red tied around their throats to keep their little heads from falling in the snow. And I turned around and
But my kids were totally into it, and so for Christmas for the next couple of years, that was one of the requested songs in my household.
Nice.
But when I looked it up, I was fascinated to find out that the year before that, so the year before Pentatonics covered it, Kim Wilde from the Kids in America covered it as a Christmas song. She put out a Christmas album, and she sings it with her father Marty and her brother Ricky, who are also musicians in their own right.
I was following the pack, all swallowed in their coats, with scarves of red tied round their throats to keep their little heads from falling in the snow. And I turned around.
And so I'm going to say in 2013, it officially became a Christmas song.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like there needs to be a council that meets and decides, okay, my favorite things, it's a Christmas song now.
For number 18, we have It's That Time of the Year by Marley Siu from Anna and the Apocalypse.
Snow is falling on the frosty ground. Christmas cheer is spreading all around. It's that time of year, but I'm feeling so blue.
Yeah, so Anna and the Apocalypse is a charming, low-budget horror Christmas musical, and trying to do any one of those things on a low budget is challenge enough, but to do them all simultaneously and to have the results be, this successful, I think is something of a miracle. And I like the songs a lot, but they aren't particularly Christmas-centric, except for this one.
Yep.
And this is a song that's performed as a sort of Christmas tune during a high school talent show or presentation or whatever. And I love that the premise seems to be like, what if we did Santa Baby, but without all that subtlety?
It made it more like a hammer. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just cut right to the point here. And so, I find it very amusing. But I think, if you are down for the idea of a Christmas musical that is also a teenage angst zombie movie, I think you'll have a good time with Anna and the Apocalypse.
Yeah, so this movie was completely off my radar. I have never heard of it until you sent this over.
Oh, wow.
So pulled it up on YouTube. I watched that scene, which is fantastic. And so now this one's on my list. I will give a quick content warning for people, as Alonso just mentioned. So if you get excited for his mixtape and when this episode ends, you click the link and play it, may not be suitable for the youngest of listeners in the car or in the house with you. There's a little bit of suggestive language.
Good point. Yes, I had not thought of that, but yeah, the little content warning there. But no, I'm so thrilled that you're going to check this out. This is why I did the book, because I think there's so many little gems out there that people have missed out there for one reason or another, that just had tiny releases, or you didn't know that it was a Christmas movie because it doesn't say it in the title. But yeah, like I believe me, I'll be thrilled if anybody wants to listen to this mixtape. But if people also want to go back and watch Anna and the Apocalypse or Christmas Again or Love the Coopers, that's also exciting to me.
That's fantastic. For number 19, we have This Day by Justin Cornwall and Sharon Rose from Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey.
'Cause all my life I
knew we'd see this day.
I knew we'd see this day. I knew we both would see it.
Yeah, so this was an original musical that was made for Netflix, and it's big and splashy. It's a period piece. It has a mostly black cast, and just, I think, really exuberant and colorful, elaborate set pieces and big bursts of choreography. It is as maximalist as something like the 1970s Scrooge is. And this is the song, I think, that I always carry with me, that I think is just so big and booming and boisterous, that just conveys what this movie has going on. There's a great villain number here also that Keegan-Michael Key performs. But this is the song I think is a great intro. And I think if you hear it and you're like, oh, yes, more of that, you'll really enjoy Jingle Jangle.
Yeah, this one was just a few years ago, and I don't know that Netflix did a great job promoting it, because I don't think we saw it until just a couple years ago. But it's just like you said, to me it was kind of like a cross between Disney's more recent Nutcracker and Wicked, and just the decadence of it. It's kind of got that steampunky vibe, but just saturated color. They have some fantastic set designers there.
I've ever seen.
Yeah. Only thing I was going to mention about this is the score was also done by John Denby, who scored Elf as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, and I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't say he also scored that powerhouse film from 1998, Disney's I'll Be Home for Christmas, with Jonathan Taylor Thomas, which I noticed was absent from your book.
Yeah. I was Bran from Deck the Hallmark forced me to watch that one once, and it did not go well. But you can listen to that episode.
I mentioned that because the composer, he was doing this right as all the COVID lockdowns happened. And so all the orchestral pieces, they were being recorded individually while he supervised over Zoom on the performers, and then he stitched them all back together, and was actually made the comment that he was actually rather pleased with how it turned out, considering all the issues they had doing it. And then I think John Legend does the soundtrack, and
he wrote
Philip Lawrence,
one of the songs, and then I think like Usher performed maybe the single version of This Day. I think this did open in 2020, so it might have kind of gotten lost in the lockdown shuffle. But I hope people are digging it up and finding it.
Yeah, really good movie. Number 20, it's All I Need Is a Miracle by Mike and the Mechanics from Spencer.
All I need is a miracle. All I need is you. All I need is a miracle. All I need is you.
A bit of a cheat, I grant you. This is, no one has thought of it as a Christmas song, but it is a song that there are songs where you never think, ooh, I love this song, or turn up the radio, I want to hear it. But they're just sort of there in the background. They kind of are part of the wallpaper of your life. And then you hear them in another context, and suddenly it pops in a way that it hadn't before. And so Spencer is this beautiful but like really tough drama where Kristen Stewart plays Princess Diana. And it is about, having to spend Christmas with the royal family, where her marriage is falling apart. Like Charles is clearly, never stopped being in love with Camilla Parker Bowles. She's dealing with eating disorders. She's dealing with, all of the stuff that Meghan Markle told us about, the firm, and, there's this wonderful ending where she gets to leave. She's got her 2 kids. They go get drive-through, because the kids
get their
that's what they want to
KFC
get. And they drive off and they crank up All I Need Is a Miracle. And it's like, I am always going to think of this movie now when I hear that song.
And they're like fist pumping and chanting along with it. And so
it's a lovely moment. And look, it's got miracle in the title. I think we could sideways make this work as a Christmas song.
We're all about Christmas adjacent songs here, so absolutely it works. So I was thinking about this when I was watching that scene. Do you remember the music video for All I Need Is a Miracle?
I don't. What happens?
So Mike and the Mechanics had this like continuing story through their early music videos, which was them as a band kind of like on tour, stopping at different places. So the premise for the music video was they had just finished up playing. It starts where Silent Running, the video for Silent Running, stops. So in Silent Running, they end up at this restaurant playing. So All I Need Is a Miracle, they're finishing their set at the restaurant. All I Need Is a Miracle is their last song. And their tour manager is talking to the restaurant owner and trying to get paid. And the restaurant owner is like, actually, you guys owe me money. No one came to see your band, so I lost all kinds of money tonight from the restaurant. I'm going to impound all your equipment in your van or whatever. You got to pay me instead for what I lost. And so the whole video is their tour manager out trying to round up money. He's got to pay this guy $500, I guess 500 pounds. It's English. And he ends up getting robbed. He ends up in like an underground high stakes mahjong game. It's just goofy.
As you do.
Yeah, as one does when, and it ends with him petting a stray dog, and then a Rolls Royce pulls up and the owner gets out and he's been looking for the dog and he thinks the guy found it for him and he just drops this stack of money on him. And so everything's solved. And so I was thinking about that, and you could actually Christmasify that. They could be playing on Christmas Eve. And you could just lemon drop kid that whole scene instead. And and that's how he's out there trying to raise money, is he's got his bell and he's got his little tin. And so just my random thought that seems like, it's its 40th anniversary this year. So, if they're looking to do something with it, Mike Rutherford, if you happen to be listening to this, there's an idea for you.
You're sitting on a gold mine, Mike.
Yep. Before I move on, we're coming to the home stretch here. I did want to touch on something from the scene you're talking about at the end of this movie. And I'm sure everyone has noticed this, but I don't see anyone talking about it. So when Kristen Stewart turns on the radio in the Porsche and All I Need Is a Miracle starts blasting, did you notice the car stereo says track 1 on the screen? which is interesting because it's a cassette deck. So I had to do a little research for this. And that cassette deck is a Porsche model CR10, which was the standard cassette deck in a Porsche at the time. And it did have an optional in-dash CD player, but we don't see that. But it also had an optional CD changer that you'd put in the luggage area. So I'm assuming that's what we're seeing here, is she's got the CD all queued up in the luggage area. But the issue with that is in 1991...
Was not track 1?
It was not track 1. It was track 2 after Silent Running. And there were no compilation albums available in 1991 that had the song as track 1. So...
Oh, you are putting Pablo Larraín on blast.
So here's my thought. My hypothesis is that Pablo Larraín didn't make an error.
It's a mix CD.
Well, and mix CDs didn't exist because we didn't have CDRs yet.
Right. Okay,
I think he's subtly insinuating the existence of a multiverse. He's got the films Jackie, he's got Maria, he's got Spencer, and I'm going to go with the theory that they all take place in a parallel universe where Mike Rutherford and Atlantic Records made the decision that All I Need Is a Miracle needs to be the lead track on their tape. Or maybe there was a compilation album in the UK that never made it onto Discogs. Your take?
And you know what? Maybe in that universe, Diana lives. That'd be great.
All right. That was that. Moving on. We've got 3 more here to wrap up. We've got number 21, and it's That Christmas Morning Feeling by Will Ferrell and the cast of Spirited.
Christmas morning feeling.
Is there a morning more appealing? The magical moon of being merry is very necessary.
Yeah, so like Jingle Jangle, this was a made for a streamer. I did get to see a press screening of this movie on a big screen and would love to see it projected again. But in the meantime, it's one that I've gone back to watch on TV every year. And yeah, this is a big, elaborate, at times literally splashy movie. There's an entire number that is people kicking puddles. I love this movie. It plays with the Christmas Carol mythos. I run very hot and cold with the songs of Pasek and Paul. Did not care for Greatest Showman or Dear Evan Hansen, but I love La La Land and I love Spirited. And I think there's a lot of really catchy, just numbers that will stick to your brain. But this is one that I keep going back to. And it has that ascending exuberance that you get in a great musical and in a great Christmas song.
Oh, absolutely. So this was, I think, the final one where I had also picked this movie. I'd picked Bring Back Christmas instead of this song.
That's a good one, too.
Yeah, and mainly...
I was torn between those two, in fact.
And I mainly went with that one only because when this movie came out, we hadn't watched it yet, but the soundtrack came up available, it's been, 3 years ago? So my daughter was about 7, and I would just put this one on and play it, and she started to memorize the monologue from the middle of Bringing Back Christmas, where Ryan Reynolds is talking about, poor, lazy, deplorable Doug who cares more about convenience than the respect of his town, and so on and so on.
Doug, who cares more about convenience than the happiness and respect of his town, of his country, of our sacred holiday.
And so that Christmas, there were multiple times when we were out just doing our shopping, and we'd be at like the home improvement store or whatever, and there's the fake trees, and she would point to the fake trees and be, poor, lazy, deplorable Doug, who cares? And so, that one is going to forever be one of my favorites.
Well, that'll rocket it to the top of the list. I get it.
For number 22, we have the medley, and it's a medley of Deck the Halls and What Child Is This by the Swingle Singers from The Holdovers.
So yeah, The Holdovers, is obviously set in 1970, and so they do some interesting period choices for the music here. And I knew the name Swingle Singers, but I didn't really know their output. And then I heard this, and I was like, yes, please, more of this, because like one of my favorite Christmas albums is the now out of print Esquivel's Space Age Bachelor Pad Christmas. I love sort of loungy 50s, 60s. I mean, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about expanding my Christmas music repertoire is getting all the albums that somehow my parents never bought in the 60s and 70s. So your Percy Faiths and your Ray Conniff singers and, all of that kind of just the free design, all the just smooth and choral and hip kind of stuff. The Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass Christmas album. So yeah, the Swingle Sisters are totally in that tradition. It's like, yes, I can't get enough of this groove.
Yeah, it's how would I describe that? It's that like sparse kind of, like you said, 50s, 60s kind of like jazz groove. Not, I guess, kind of similar to like the Vince Guaraldi Peanuts, if you had just this like a cappella weaving over the top of it. But I think this came off from their first Christmas album. I think it was Noel Sans Passeport in '68, and it's been reissued multiple times under different names since then. But almost every track on the album is a medley of multiple Christmas songs with them doing their a cappella thing over the top of it. Yep. Exactly that. And then they do 2 non-medleys, but still the same a cappella, but it's and they do Silent Night and White Christmas, which I think also shows up in this film. I think,
there might be more than one. I need to go way deeper on them, but just because the taste I've gotten is like just very, very exciting to me. And when I heard it in The Holdovers, like it was the kind of thing where like, I got to check the closing credits and see who this is, because I needed more of it in my life right now.
Yeah, and they're a group that's been active, I think, since the early 60s, originally a French a cappella group, Les Swingle Singers. And they moved to the UK, they redid their personnel, became Swingle 2, and then the Swingles, and then Swingle Singers. And,
a lot of performers coming in and out of there. They're like the Menudo of French a cappella groups.
Yeah, so Ward Swingle, who started it's no longer with us, but it's just been like you said, a revolving door of people who are have that talent, and they just keep pumping out music. All right, and we are at the final one here. This is The Point of No Return by Gene McDaniels from Christmas Eve at Miller's Point.
But now there's no leaving you. I know that for a fact. I'm at the point of no return, and for for me, there'll be no turning back.
So this is absolutely not a Christmas song. I will grant you this. But it is used to really great effect in this movie that I love from last year called Christmas Eve in Miller's Point. It's about a family gathering at the ancestral home in Long Island. And it's mostly unspoken, but you really get the impression that this is the last time this is going to happen. The mother is getting on in years. She's probably about to go into assisted living. And you can just sense that this is the end of an era. This is everyone gathering together for the last time. And at some level or other, a lot of them really understand that. And you kind of see them taking these kind of mental snapshots and really being in the moment because they know that this is something they have to hang on to and savor. And one of the cool things about the movie is that you're never quite clear what year it is.
Yeah.
Like there are a few clues, like the cell phones are the kind you have to like punch the number over and over again to get the letter you want. There's a Roomba. I think there's like a mention of 9/11. So it's like, it puts it around like 2004, 2005. But it's that thing where when you're in a family and you come back home and the house hasn't really changed that much. And so like, you know, your old posters are still hanging in the bedroom and your parents haven't redone the living room in decades and the songs are all old. And so it could be, it's this weird timeless void. And so this is a song from the 60s that they play several times. And I did not know it. I knew Gene McDaniel's Tower of Strength, which was a Burt Bacharach song. But I didn't know this one, but by playing these old kind of 60s, early 70s songs, it adds to that sense of like, this could be any year in this rather wide window of time because time has stood still in this home. And nothing has been updated. Nothing, you know, we still have the wood paneling. There's probably still shag carpeting in some of the rooms, you know. And this is a great song.
Yeah, that's your description there reminds me of, for years, at my parents' house, they had a Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Wii. We're going back farther. Still in a box that we bought them new, early 2000s, and it sat there. So you'd go, you know, over at Christmas time, and you know, did they just receive it, or was it, you know, there for 10 years, which was the case with them, and just still never got around to plugging into the TV.
Right, you move the box, and there's that square around the edge floor.
And Gene McDaniel's just a outstanding, unique voice.
Yes.
He was actually fairly popular in the early to mid 60s, and he had a lot of charting songs. This Point of No Return was a charting song for him on the Hot 100. And then I think I saw something from him where he said he was just kind of done with the music industry, and he moved to Maine and just kind of lived by, you know, with his family up there. And he said he was kind of a self-described hermit and just, you know, lived out the rest of his days in New England.
Yeah, you know, you see so many people who desperately try to remain relevant or in the spotlight. It's very cool where somebody at the height of their career is like, we're good. I'm done.
Yeah,
see ya.
Did what I wanted to, and now we're, and with that, we come to the end of your Merry Mixtape. So, Alonso, I had a great time with you this evening.
And thank you, sir. Me too.
I want to thank you for taking the time to put together your tape and coming on here and sharing it with everyone this evening.
My great pleasure.
So, before I let you go here, I do have to ask you, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about Christmas films, and, you know, you've shared some of the things you like and you don't like. I got to ask, are there any films where you and Dave are just miles apart from each other and one of you loves it and the other one just sits and steams while you're...
Oh, yeah. That's why we started doing a podcast together, because people thought, oh, you know, it's really funny when you guys disagree. It happens with some regularity. I'd say the biggest one is there is a film from a French filmmaker that he really loves named Claire Denis. And she did a movie called Beau Travail, and it's sort of loosely based on Billy Budd in that it is about this squadron of the French Foreign Legion, and they're out in the middle of the desert, and there is this sort of one young, innocent, beautiful soldier who is driving the cruel, you know, sergeant into like erotic frenzy, basically. And I have tried watching that movie on a couple occasions. I went with him to see it projected once. And people who love that movie love that movie. Like if you look at the Sight and Sound list that they do every 10 years, I'm sure Beau Travail is probably in the top like 30 or something. It has a very fervent fan base. I am not a member of it.
So that was my lead in because I have one final question for you. So
shoot.
When I'm talking with a guest, somehow in that conversation always comes up that my wife doesn't like Christmas music, which is tenuous at times. We haven't mentioned anything about that yet in our conversation, but she maintains that I'm actively trying to establish her as the villain in my podcasting arc. So to do that justice, I need to make sure I fit it in. But a couple months ago, my wife made her own Merry Mixtape list and sent it to me and has tentatively agreed to come on and do an episode.
Oh, that's great.
So as someone who has spent 15 years with their husband doing a podcast together, I think more than anyone else out there, I got to ask you, what am I getting into?
Well, I mean, we're both film critics, so we're coming onto this with fairly equal footing, and I think people tell us that the reason they listen to the show is to sort of listen to us banter about whose turn it is to do the dishes as much as anything else. So if you guys can bring the actual dynamic of your relationship into this conversation, and obviously be respectful about her musical opinions and her her parameters of when one should be listening to it, but if you can also sort of needle her in the way that spouses always can and let her do the same to you, I think you'll be great.
Awesome. And where else can folks find you out in the digital landscape? And is there anything else that you want to talk about before we turn off the mics?
Sure. Well, I'm a Duralde on Blue Sky and Alonso.Duralde on Instagram, and generally speaking, the easiest person on earth to Google. Because I think except for a distant relative who's less than a year old, I am the only Alonso Duralde on earth. So it's pretty easy to find me. Please check out my podcast, pick up the book, pick up my previous book, Hollywood Pride, which I did for Turner Classic Movies, that I'm very proud of, about the history of LGBTQ plus cinema on screen and off. And and you know what? If you are a fan of Christmas decor, Dave and I have an Instagram for all of our ornaments and, things that we put up around the house and stuff. On Instagram, it's called DXAX Tree, TREE. And maybe you'll find that fun too.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put links to all that stuff in the show notes for folks.
Thanks.
Thanks again, buddy.
Appreciate it. I hope people have the chance to pick up the new edition of Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas. And I hope everybody has a great holiday season. Thanks for listening.
I want to thank Alonso once again for coming on to share his mixtape. You'll find links in the show notes to listen to Alonso's mixtape on both Tidal and YouTube. You'll also find links to all of Alonso's podcasts and socials, as well as links to purchase the latest edition of Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas. And with that, we'll hand things over to pre-recorded outro Kevin. Thank you for listening to 'Tis the Soundtrack. You can find all of our past episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We don't judge, but we'd sure appreciate a like or subscribe while you're there. You can also find us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, all under the handle @TisTheSoundtrack. Our website is tisthesoundtrack.com, and you can get in touch with us via email at kevin@tisthesoundtrack.com. Our intro music is Krampus Workshop by that wizard of most everything audio, Kevin MacLeod. You can find him and his work at incomptech.com. All other music, songs, and snippets of audio used throughout this episode belong to their respective copyright holders and are used solely for the purpose of commentary. Links to all the music featured in this episode are available in the show notes or episode description for you folks on YouTube. Cheers, and Merry Christmas.